Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Relationship Advice and it's by user Hubby of a Hoarder. My ex was just arrested for DUI plus child endangerment. My ex was just arrested for DUI and child endangerment. I got a call on my cell around midnight from her. It was a butt dial. She didn't speak into the phone, but I did hear what were very clearly bar noises coming from the background. This was on a night that my ex had custody of my son, so either he was in a bar or he was home alone. He is 10, which would not be okay. I called her, asked where she was, and got no answer. I then went to her place, called the police, who waited outside while I tried to get her to come out. After about an hour, the police left. Although they didn't believe that she was in the house, they didn't have cause to forcibly enter. They were apologetic and gave me some good suggestions, but eventually left. I continued to wait outside. After about 10 minutes, she pulled up in her car. She passed out at the wheel. To make a long story short, the cops came back. She was arrested and charged with child endangerment and driving under the influence. I got her house keys from her, entered her house, and retrieved my son. Before he came down, I had them put her in the police car so that he wouldn't have to see his mom in handcuffs. The cop was sympathetic and wasn't sure if the child endangerment charge would stick, but he said he'd charge her and let the DA figure out what charges would stick. She's already on probation for another DUI she got in December and had been admitted to an accelerated rehabilitation program. She's going to have both sets of charges leveled against her now and is nearly certainly going to jail, at least for a little while. What a night. I could really use a hug. Yikes, OP, that is a rough night. Thankfully, your wife didn't do anything more stupid than to endanger other people while driving drunk. She definitely deserves to go to jail for that. But leaving your son alone to go out drinking? Like, seriously, can she make no good decisions? OP, if I were you, I would take this, whatever charges she gets, and just go for full custody. He shouldn't even have to spend a night with her anymore. If she does get to see him, it should be absolutely supervised. She's lost all privilege to be a parent with her behavior. So I wouldn't just see her in criminal court, I would also take her to family court. And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's check out the community comments. Leif Erickson says, drunk driving not cool. That said, 10 and can't handle being home by himself? I was doing that when I was 7. At 10, I biked around the neighborhood by myself, and when I was 11, I walked 2 miles home from middle school regularly. I'm 19 now, so I'm not referring to some distant past. Child endangerment seems really harsh. And Dopey responds, actually I agree with that. When I was that age and younger, I was alone for brief periods. Walked 1.5 miles to school and biked miles to the local creek to fish, hunt crayfish, and play. My problem with him being alone are these. I live 5 doors down from my ex. If she wanted to go out for the evening, she could have easily called me. I was home, stone sober, watching TV. Also, my son didn't know he was alone and there was no phone in the house. Given the layout of her house and the fact that there was an electric heater in his room, he didn't hear me and the police outside banging on the door. He certainly wouldn't have known if there was a fire, burglary, or other emergency. Even if he did know, he wouldn't have been able to call anyone for help. I've left my son alone for brief periods, but always with a phone in the house, a list of rules as to what he can or can't do, and an expectation as to when I would return. My weed is hairy says, I know that divorced dads often get it bad in court, but courts and judges have absolutely no sympathy for DUI offenders, especially multiple ones. She's quite effed. And I am not a lawyer, but I would bet your custody arrangement will change, and yes, she is going to jail. And Dopey responds, I spoke with a friend who is a criminal defense attorney and he said she will most likely not go to jail. Jails in our area are pretty full. She will most likely get house arrest with ankle monitor. This is good, as she won't then lose her job. And No Fly Zone says, I'm sorry you're going through this. My dad was you when we were kids, except I think my mom was worse. At least your ex came home. Courts wouldn't give my dad custody. That was unthinkable 30-some years ago. Don't know how it is now. Okay, I am trying to make this about me, but I'll say this. My dad is a saint. He almost never said anything bad about my mom, and believe me, she deserved it. He still gets sad about how crappy it was. Anyway, just keep on going the way you're going. Give your son support and be available as much as you can. He will never forget any of this for 1 second. I won't ever forget all the things my dad gave us, gave up for us, and still does for us. Additional information about what my marriage was like. Well, my ex is a compulsive hoarder. We were together for almost 16 years, married for 7 of those years. Our basement was filled, literally floor to ceiling, with her things, with very small walkways in between the piles. The living areas of our house were boarded, in every room, with piles and piles of everything imaginable. Old mail, newspapers, documents from her work, disassembled desks, boxes of I don't know what. Our friends and neighbors would invite us to their homes and we couldn't reciprocate. Our son couldn't have friends to our home. Only her family and her parents, who are similarly afflicted, visited us. In short, I felt like a hostage to her compulsion. The balance of power in our relationship shifted when, a few years back, I was laid off and sank into a depression. I had a difficult time finding work and eventually went back to work as a temp. Hard to swallow with an MBA. During that time, in every fight, my ex made me feel inadequate, constantly chiding my lack of earning power and reminding me of how cheated she felt by my professional situation. Our finances spun out of control. I handled both her anger and my life generally badly. I essentially retreated into a funk. 4 years ago, I managed on my own to pull myself out of that funk. I used connections I made temping to get a good job. With the help of my family and a credit counseling service, we regained our financial footing. I started to reassert myself in our relationship with her and with my son. I cooked dinner every night and insisted that we take that meal together as a family and a lot more. I'd been slowly trying to drag us all, including myself, into some semblance of normalcy so that my son had the environment he needed to grow and prosper. We shared parenting, making disciplinary decisions jointly. We took turns at bedtime and story time. I even became the family barber for my son and myself. But of course, we had complications. Our 2 families. My mother and father are compulsive neat freaks. I am not. My ex's parents share her hoarding problem to the point that they use their family house as a huge storage locker and rent an apartment in which to live. She sought therapy for her hoarding and took antidepressants, but nothing changed. On top of that were so many other issues, e.g. the heavy drinking and more financial problems. Eventually, we were evicted from the place we lived at that time because of her hoarding. She slowly filled up our new place with more junk after a few months of relative cleanliness, and I left her last November. Alright, well, the community agrees that OP is doing the right thing for his son. Some people think she might go to jail. OP doesn't think so. So let's go on to the update to see what happened next. I applied for a temporary protection from abuse order from our local court system. My ex is to have no contact with my son, on pain of a criminal contempt charge. We have a final hearing in a little over a week. Additionally, her hearing on the child endangerment charge is today. Please, mythical man in the sky in whom I don't actually believe, let her be bound over for that trial on that charge. Update. Went to court for the protection from abuse order. Ex offered to sign over full residential custody of my son to me, with her receiving 2 supervised visits a week. No overnights at her house. I took her offer. I know I've won, but honestly, it just feels crappy. Things have gotten progressively worse for my ex. She managed to get herself fired from her university job. Bye-bye tuition benefits for our kid, and is currently unemployed, living in her bananas hoarder house. My son is with me all the time now. She has 2 non-overnight visits a week. My ex signed papers to allow me to move with my son to a district that is one of the best in the state in which I live and is away from her, so that I don't have to exit my apartment every day and watch her continuing to descend into chaos. I can't and don't want to fix her problems, but it still hurts me to watch someone who was a part of my life for nearly 20 years kill herself slowly. Update 2. In new district, son is now getting the best grades he's ever gotten. 2 A's, 1 A-, 2 B's. Hooray! He's a little behind in his reading compared to his peers in his district, so he's getting daily help from the reading specialist. His mom is in jail for 90 to 180 days. Alright, so now OP is well on his way to getting custody. Now, one thing I didn't tell you guys in the beginning is that this story is overall from 16 years ago. And OP has been giving us updates, which I've curated, and we have a time travel montage. So let's move on with that to see how this story ends. My son and I moved to a suburban school district in September 2011, where he now plays sports, socializes, and otherwise has a very normal life. Moving was crucial both for his healing and mine. We both needed the geographic separation from his mother so that her issues' effect on both of us would be minimized. We only moved 12 miles away, but that short distance gives us both the space to live. My ex's life is sad. She hasn't worked in 2+ years and has difficulty finding new work, as her criminal record, 2 DUIs plus child endangerment, is fairly off-putting. I try to minimize my own contact with her, as I'm happier when I do so. From what little I gather, she still hangs out in bars, although she swears she's not drinking anymore. Her house continues to be as it was when we were married. My son refuses to go there as it simply makes him feel afraid for her and sad. Our divorce and custody situation is now finalized. Divorce was a down and dirty walkway. We kept debts and accounts in our own names. I don't pay spousal support and she doesn't pay child support. I feel like I dodged a bullet by not paying spousal support. If I had been saddled with that, my son's life and mine would have been very different. Custody took longer, settling only in the last few months. My ex now has our son every other weekend. We make adjustments to her custody during his sports season. I drive her to his games if she's in town, and her weekends are shortened to minimize the back and forth transportation impact on my son. I don't blame my ex. I realize that her issues are part of who she is and that she genuinely can't help herself. I'm sad for my son. My ex's impact on me will continue to wane with time, but she'll always be his mother. How do you, as a kid, reconcile yourself with your mother having a crappy life and a seriously debilitating mental illness? Part of all this has also been coming to terms with my own responsibility for the above as a codependent. My wife did things that sucked, but I compounded any mistakes she made by smoothing things over, hiding them, and tolerating what should have been intolerable for myself and my son. I thought I couldn't do it, couldn't be a good dad, couldn't win against my wife. I was wrong, and my son suffered for my mistakes and hers. I only hope that I can continue to make the rest of his childhood good. Update 2021. This was 11 years ago and so much happened and I learned so much. Also, my life continued on its upward trajectory from the point where this all started. So even reading this and the comments is more than a bit surreal. My life is so different now. I'll also give you an update on what happened with my wife and son. It was my ex-wife's alcoholism that was eventually her undoing. As you know, she eventually was convicted for endangering the welfare of our child and leaving him alone while she went to get drunk. Her conviction led to her being incarcerated for 6 months and losing her driver's license for 2.5 years. I used her incarceration to relocate miles away from our former residence. That relocation ended our custody disputes forever, as she couldn't drive. My son lived 90% with me from when he was 10 years old to now. He's 21 and still lives with me. We're working together to get him through nursing school with zero debt. I want to give him a great leg up and a good and stable life. I learned that my son has ADHD, as I do, and likely my ex-wife. Shepherding him through middle school and high school was extremely challenging. He's in nursing school now and doing well, but it's been a tough road to get here. My ex-wife was eventually forced to get rid of her hoard. Her landlord ended her lease and she had to move. Her parents are supporting her and got dumpsters for her to get rid of stuff. She filled 5 double-sized construction dumpsters full of her hoard from a 2-bedroom townhouse with a basement. I have no idea what her place looks like now. We don't talk, ever. My son still talks to his mom, but I stay out of that. Any interactions with her are not good for me. Boundaries! Final update 2024. I'm very much on the other side of this. My son graduated from nursing school, got a job, and moved out. He has a cool first apartment in a very happening area of my city. He's gotten a great start to having a good and productive adult life. My ex-wife is now essentially a full-time caregiver for her parents. She never worked again after losing her job in 2011. I don't know what her place looks like now and don't care. That is no longer my business. I do worry about my ex being a financial drain on my son when her parents pass, but I can't do anything about that now. Worrying doesn't solve anything. And that was OP's last entry on this whole story. It is a bit sad to think about OP's ex's wife's life and how it turned out, but she owns it. It's all hers. So OP is absolutely right to not want any part of that. And he did a great job for his son, who is now a professional nurse. So here's to you, OP. Great job in what you did for your son and for yourself. I hope for you both that things keep going on their upward trajectory. Take care, OP, and thanks for sharing. And now let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Petty Revenge and it's by user LJK624. Deliberately outstaying my welcome on the beach. Today I, 25 male, was looking for a spot to chill out on the beach and read my book. The heat was real intense, so it wasn't possible to be sat in full sun and shade was very hard to come by. Eventually, I came across 3, maybe 4 trees evenly spaced out, 2 of which had deck chairs placed under. Now, immediately I knew these chairs had been placed there by the nearby resort, and so I made the decision not to sit in them, but seeing as they were not on private land but on the public beach, I laid my towel down and sat beside them. An hour or so passed. I had been swimming, reading, and minding my own business when I knocked my bag over into the sand. At this point, I put my bag on one of the chairs, seeing as all this time I had remained undisturbed. Sure enough, minutes later, an old man, probably late 60s, comes over grumbling to himself and stares at me angrily, pointing to the deck chair. I removed my belongings and found myself apologizing begrudgingly, giving the manner in which I'd been consulted. The man continues to grumble and groan indistinctly as he moves the chair around, and I try to read my book. Just then, his wife, I assume, joins him, and they both begin berating me in thick German Austrian accents as to how I had the whole beach to choose from and decided to sit here. Now, if I'd been asked respectfully, I would have just moved and gone about my day, but given the manner in which I was spoken to, I decided to stand my ground. Calmly, I told them they could also choose to sit anywhere along the beach, at which they grew even more animated. I told them I was doing no harm, sat on public beach, at which point the man started to shout at me, "You're crazy, you're crazy! You put your luggage on my chair!" I calmly said I'd been here for an hour and it hadn't been an issue, at which point they snapped back that they'd been here longer. I still don't understand the logic in this. I simply put it to them that I didn't have an issue with the situation and went back to reading as they both set down their belongings and stormed off into the sea, presumably waiting for me to leave. At this point, I'd realized I was all but ready to go off in search of lunch anyway, until this delightful couple gave me the perfect reason to stay just a little longer. For half an hour, I sat with my book, occasionally looking over to them as they swam around glancing back at me to see if I'd gone. Eventually, the man returned. I stayed sat with my head in my book as he moved his chair around me, deliberately hanging it over my head for a length of time. I didn't look up to see what he was trying to gain from this. I did, however, note him deliberately walking across my towel as I was sat on it and doing his absolute best to kick as much sand my way as possible. I said that was real kind of him and that I thought with age you learn manners. I added that it was embarrassing for a man of his age to behave in such a way. As a result, I sat out for the best part of another half hour, at which point his wife now looked like a dried prune, having tripled her wrinkles trying to avoid me by staying in the sea. I decided I'd finally move on to get some much needed food, though not before one final flourish. I slowly gathered my things, making sure I wasn't about to leave anything behind, and with one great swoop, maybe a couple of extras for good measure, I flicked all of the sand off of my towel straight over to this great blubbering buffoon. He instantly grew red with rage. I pointed out to him that it was just the same sand he'd kicked at me. Sitting upright in his chair, he hastily grabbed a handful of sand and threw it toward me. Though he hadn't accounted for the fact that I had taken time to note the direction of the wind. Quite beautifully, it all blew back in his face. I told him to have a nice day before strolling off down the beach and waving to his wife still shriveling in the water as I hear shouts of "Idiot! Idiot!" in the distance. Honestly, made my day. Smiley face. Well, OP, it is a public beach, and even if they had their towels, which they didn't, on the chairs, it still would have meant absolutely nothing in a public or private beach. Entitled Annoying People with Sand. Thanks so much for sharing, OP. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out, so here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later, and also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.